KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to KNON.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.
What a game! What a game!
Get off my lawn.
Jim Schutze with Get Off My Lawn. Good to be back. I have an exciting guest here today. You're not going to believe it. I am so honored that I was able to get this guy to come on the show. Eric Celeste, who's been everywhere. Eric is going to show up next month, July issue, in D Magazine as D Magazine's city columnist. Where else have you been over the years, Eric?
Well, should we go chronologically, or let's see. Fort Worth Star-Telegram, D Magazine, interned at the Dallas Morning News out of school.
Oh, I didn't. Oh, that's right. That's right.
Southwest Spirit Magazine, American Way Magazine, the Met, the Dallas Observer, where we worked together,
right,
and
online
random blogs.
What was the online stuff?
Microsoft Sidewalk back in the 90s.
Yeah.
When they thought they wanted to get into the Guide Live type game.
Eric has covered the waterfront in journalism. I write a column for the Observer, of course, called Get Off My Lawn, but it's always about City Hall screwed up again this week. But now Eric Celeste, damn, when he starts writing a column, that's going to be a column, right? What are you going to talk about? What are you going to tell people?
Well, I forgot to mention one place I worked, which is Culture Map recently.
Oh, right. Yes, until now.
Yeah, and so when I came back to town, because I was in Atlanta at a paper.
And what was your job at that paper?
I was the editor of the weekly there.
Right.
Creative Loafing.
Let's see this guy.
So, what Tim Rogers, the editor at D, he was concerned, I think, when I came back into town. I told him I'm going to write some columns about what's going on in the city. I kind of want to get back into talking about city issues. And that really was highlighted for me when I went to Atlanta, and I would read what was going on back home in my mind and feel like I have things to say about this. And I'd been here a long time. I knew a lot of the people involved in a lot of the issues of the day, and wanted to put that knowledge to use. And because of the way digital media is now, I knew I didn't need a publisher to do that. I could just create my own site. So when I came back, I decided to do that, but Culture Map, the folks at Culture Map said, why don't you just do it on our site, and we can handle the distribution and everything else. And I said, that's great. So once Tim saw that and saw that I could comment on those issues and also be very open about all of my conflicts, because the idea is that
you've done some political consulting work too.
I've done political consulting work. I've got a lot of friends who are in I worked on Angela Hunt's campaign in 2011.
I've heard people say that you made Craig Watkins what he is today.
Very tall.
Yeah.
Is it that I do that? Yeah. And I worked on Craig Watkins' re-election campaign in 2010, and so in communication. So, but I'm just real open and honest about that in the columns, and I let people know. My first column for D is looking at what the legacy of Angela Hunt is, and I say right up at the top, you don't get more conflicted than I am. I worked for her campaign. I consider her a friend. My daughter babysat her child for an entire summer. So. I just said that right up front. And if you don't want to listen to what I have to say, or I can't make a compelling argument, then that's my fault, and no one will want to publish it. But I think as long as you do that and say, this has informed me, though, in this way,
right,
and therefore giving me insight that I think might help you understand the city better.
See, Eric has been all around the block, which is interesting because there's a generational difference. I started out for daily newspapers, and back in the day, daily newspaper people were kind of like little nuns and monks. You only dated within the newsroom,
right?
It was like a little order that you belonged to, and it was considered dangerous, that it somehow tainted you in some way if you had any experience outside the business.
Right, and that my first thought along those lines was, well, journalists aren't cute enough, so I want to date. I want to date somewhere else, and but
they have the advertising department, Eric.
Well, that's where you start. You go marketing, advertising, sales, and then you go to another company. And so I said, I remember having this conversation with Wick Allison, the publisher of D, when I decided to go and do some consulting on my own. I said, I feel as though Wick, who is insane and he's nuts, but he's super smart and
the master of cute enough. Anyway,
right, and he. He has both. People don't realize, he is the editor and the publisher of D and has been since he came back. And he walks that line really well. And he has an understanding of the power structure of Dallas and some of those moneyed types who pull a lot of strings. And I think that gives him an insight that is really important. And so I told him, I said, I need to go, if I'm going to do that in my career, I need to go work with some of these people. And it was... I think it worked out, and it gave me a lot of an understanding of what really happens when the doors close and the notepads are put away.
Wick is a good example of a guy who has experience outside the business, or who comes from outside the business, and it affects in who and what he is. I went to dinner with some people one night, and this lady in the couple was in charge of advertising for a company, and she had known Wick for years. And she said Wick called her up that morning and said that he wanted her to buy some ads in D, and she said no. So he calls her back an hour later. I really need you to buy these ads, and she said no. He calls her all day long, and finally at the end of the day she says, Wick, I really resent this. I feel that you are taking advantage of our friendship, and you're just browbeating me, so okay, yes, I'll buy the ad. And at that point, her husband, who was at dinner, said, the only thing Wick heard all day long was yes.
Right, well, that's, and that's one of the things you learn when you go out and you work with politicians, and you work with, I did corporate work, I did work for the Dallas Housing Authority. There's a dangerous thing you learn, which is these are real people, and
it's hard.
It wrecks it. It's hard to caricature these
human
folks.
beings. How can we do our stuff on them?
I can't make fun of you for just endlessly and get a lot of columns out of it. And so that's a problem. But what it does is sort of show you, there are a lot of folks out there who you think are doing Machiavellian things who just happen to be in positions where they have some authority or sway, and they're probably not even that bright. But they have a singularity purpose.
Got to make a decision.
And they're good at that, and that's what they do, and and they live with it and they move on. And it's interesting to see those folks and realize that sometimes the way things are just because it happened to get here, not because somebody made one decision in a back room and said thumbs up or thumbs down.
I had this experience late in life that realized how limiting the other kind of journalism life can be. I got pushed into being on the board of a small private organization. So for the first 3 months, every time we met, I found lots of stuff they were doing wrong. I pointed out to them, I had a lot of great criticisms of them. And finally, after a while, the chairman of the board, who was a friend of mine, said, Jim, these are great criticisms, man. You really are able to see what we're doing wrong. But on this particular issue, what would your idea be for a solution? And I sat there and I thought, well, I don't do solutions.
Right. That's not my role.
Yeah, I'm not into that. That's not my job. I always thought the Observer was the first place I went to work. Where they didn't have that old-fashioned journalism so-called objectivity ethic. And it was more like, if you got a bias, just show your cards.
Right.
Show what they are. I think there is still a very strict fairness doctrine that may be more fair than the idea that newspaper people are some kind of priesthood.
Yeah, there's a great scene in The Big Chill where Jeff Goldblum basically says, I'm more honest because I know I'm a jerk
Right.
and I'm telling you I'm a jerk than putting on this facade. And there's something to that. I think that, when I went to Atlanta it was kind of a turnaround project with the paper there, just because they were coming out of a bankruptcy and there was a financial situation.
Right.
But also, I was tasked with sort of helping them understand the role in the digital age of a paper that had a long history and a lot of success in print. And I said, with a smaller staff than you're used to, and in the way the world is now, and I think it's the right way to do things, is advocacy journalism doesn't mean sort of a knee-jerk left-wing response to anything.
Right.
It means we wanted to be a paper of passions. What are your passions? What are you really knowledgeable about? What do you know well? What can you call BS on, one way or the other, in a non-ideological way? And let's show the cards, and let's do that. And by the way, if there are things we don't care about, we're not going to cover them just because they've been covered before. We basically stopped doing police stories, which are great narratives and sell really well, because we didn't have a cop reporter, and we would have just been doing it because. But we had great urban transportation coverage because we had a guy on staff who was really passionate about that.
You did a great piece there in Atlanta about the Constitution and school reform and their coverage of it. Run that by me again.
Yeah, that really, I didn't get into it as much as I wanted to, but,
I say the Constitution, I should explain, we mean the Atlanta Journal. Atlanta Journal Constitution,
right. And, the relationship there is a little different with the Morning News Observer relationship here. There they just it really made me, I don't know if this is the right venue to say this, but it made me appreciate the morning news in a lot of ways, because...
No, I'm sorry, please
I can't,
don't say that.
You can just take that out.
Take that back.
But, it helped me see, because the AJC, while there are some really good journalists there, they really did just abandon the city. They moved everything north, just like how our sort of inside I-635 is what I consider Dallas, and maybe even narrow that down to inside Northwest Highway Loop, right? There it's called ITP, inside the perimeter, and it's the same sort of inside a highway, and that's Atlanta, basically, and there's only 420,000 people who live there. There's 5 million people who live in the suburbs, and that's who the AJC cared about.
Right.
And so the relationship was a little different. And so I went in there, and I felt like there's just like I felt like with the Morning News, that there was an antagonistic relationship with the ISD, where they covered it in an investigative beat manner and not at all as an explanatory beat. And I think they've corrected that. But I felt like the AJC did that. So they got a lot of praise for a series that showed widespread cheating.
Right.
Deservedly so, as far as I know.
Yeah.
But then they went and they took that model and tried to apply it to the rest of the country, and tried to come out and say, we have found statistical evidence of cheating around the country. And the way they went about it, fashioning press releases before they would even call those spokespeople at the ISDs in those cities to let them know what they found. Getting ready for TV appearances, hiring a PR firm. This was going to be their big Pulitzer push, and that drove everything. And I still to this day think that the statistics and the science behind it were faulty. And I knew people in Dallas, but it wasn't just Dallas, it was Houston and other cities that just said, this is flat wrong. And by the way, I also had faith that the Morning News, say what you want, but if that was going on here, they've been, since they were one of the first papers to bust the DISD, their ISD, on such a cheating scandal many years ago.
Right.
That caused the district to clean that up, to monitor themselves, and the paper's been monitoring it ever since. So I just didn't believe it. I called BS on it. They were furious. The managing editor sent me some really funny emails that I put online. You can Google that if you want. That said he was going to, basically ruin my career for me. So that was fun.
I've had people tell me that all the time, and my standard comeback is career. What are you going to do? Yeah. that's fascinating, and I agree very grudgingly about the morning news. There's some really smart, top-flight journalists there, and the morning news has been very, very innovative in their attempt to keep up with what's happening.
That's really what I'm impressed by, and I sat on a panel before I left with Jim Maroney and told him I thought the paywall was a bad idea, and I still think it's a bad idea overall. But that's not the thing. Is he's a smart guy as a business guy, and he knows it's not about one idea right now.
Yeah, it's
about as many ideas as we can figure out how to fund as many ideas as we can to figure out where the new revenue streams are going to come from journalism. And I think, because I've done some of the corporate stuff, I've done some. I've sat into groups that do storytelling for corporations. I've done projects for corporations. And tried to see what the common thread is. What are the great stories here to tell? And corporations are really bad at knowing what those are.
Yeah.
And so if you can go in and help them tell that, I think that's worthwhile in some ways, as long as you're also telling the corporate malfeasance stories.
Right.
So, what he's done is say, okay, well, we will fund. We'll get. Our culture is one that doesn't reward that entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
So we'll fund these little companies, and they'll be separate, and they won't even be in our building.
Yeah.
And they'll help our former advertisers figure out how to tell their stories in ways that are relevant in the digital age. We'll do an events company, which is what people have finally figured out, that, hey, if your value is the brand you've established for 40 or 50 years, put together a series of talks and invite the best, most interesting people to discuss urban problems and host that and make some money at it.
Yeah. And we've both known, I guess we're coming up on the break here, but we've both known how it goes in the rest of the daily business. I had a friend who talked about going to a convention of features editors for daily newspapers all over the country, and she spent a whole bunch of time on researching her speech. And her speech was, "You're not going to get the youth audience by hiring another rock writer. You already got a rock writer. Right. You got to. It's harder than that, and you have to do more work." And she had a list of things they could do, and so then she gives her speech, and afterward. They break up and they're having cheese and coffee or whatever, and they're walking around, and she realizes they're all talking about, man, we need to hire another rock writer. Because you can't, in some ways, you can't penetrate that culture, that industrial culture.
It's really, really hard. And they'll bring people in, and I was always, for a while, the young guy you'd bring in to help us do that.
Right.
And you'd come in and you go, oh, okay, well, we got to do all of these, and they'd go, whoa, whoa,
yeah.
whoa.
Yeah, we don't do that.
We don't do that. Hey, just let's hire a rock writer.
Yeah, we don't do that. We just gradually go out of business.
Right.
Anyway, I want to talk about city council stuff, and I'm hoping that you can just scoop the hell out of yourself on your column and just blab ahead of time what's going on. We'll be back. We're going to do the sad music that means that we have to go away now for a minute, but we'll be back. Please come back and join us with Eric Celeste, Jim Schutze, Get Off My Lawn. See you in a minute.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to KNON.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.
When they're gone for good. This is Scott from KNON's Texas Blues Radio telling you don't miss out on some great blues. KNON's Texas Blues Radio Volume 5 Blues CD. It's a CD put together by real blues fans for real blues fans like you. Texas Blues Radio Volume 5 features great local blues from Michael J. and the Paul Bird Band, JJ and the Detonators, the Chris Watson Band, the Two Tones, Rough Cut Blues Band, Jeff Stone with Charlie Love, Dave Millsap, Sirloin and the Ass-Kicking Machine, Tutu Jones, Blues Boy Bo, Buddy Whittington, Andrea Dawson, Kirkland James, Sonny Colley, and Johnny Red and the Roosters. Get a copy now at Forever Young Records in Grand Prairie, Recordtown in Fort Worth, and in Dallas at Bill's Records. This is a Dallas Blues collector's item. A very limited amount of vinyl copies can be found at Forever Young Records, the sponsor of this great blues project. CD downloads are available at cdbaby.com. Whether you get it as a download, on vinyl, or on CD, all the proceeds will benefit KNON. For more info on Texas Blues Radio Volume 5, visit knon.org.
Jim Schutze, back with Get Off My Lawn, and Eric Celeste. I have a surprise that I'm going to do at the end of the program with Eric. It's going to be very moving, and I think that people are going to be in tears when they hear it, but I can't say what it is. The first part of the show, we talked about where Eric's been in the business, which is everywhere, and we mentioned that he's popping up next month as a new city-side columnist, as we call it in the business, for D Magazine. Are you gonna limit yourself to city politics, city hall, or
no? I mean, you have to start when you've especially been doing the digital thing, and for Culture Map, I would wake up, and I had other jobs, and that was sort of like my morning routine. Was I'd get up, read everything, and bang out a column in an hour, and then at 8 a.m. And so you see something, you react to it, you throw it up, and you go, and that's actually really great. And so, as you know, you used to do this for D years ago, and
I've forgotten
when you do a monthly column and you turn it in 6 weeks before it's going to run.
It's tough.
That part of the brain is really shut off over the last few years. So you start going, you do the, okay, what's happening that month?
Right.
Okay, it's September, back in school. Can I do something? And so, no, it'll be wide ranging. In this case, it'll come out about the time that Angela Hunt will have her last city council meeting. And so I wanted to look at her legacy and what that said about what we expect of our city council people and what we should expect about them. And then other columns there might be DISD stuff, I've got an idea for something on the suburbs versus the city, so it'll be wide ranging. But the goal is to help, and it's kind of silly that just I'm supposed to do this, but that's my role, is try to help explain the city to itself.
Will the headline include the phrase "good riddance"?
It's I don't even know what the headline is. I forgot. But no, it will not. It will not.
I've always felt that my relationship with Hunt, since she's been on the council, has been one of the serious compromises of my objectivity.
Oh, you and every journalist in town, Jim. It's just we're admitting it
because she's so smart.
Yeah, she does. Well, all right, several things. And again, this is what I do, right? Full disclosure.
Right.
I'm totally bought and paid for. So, but first of all, she does all our work for us.
Yeah.
Let's start there.
Right.
She does all of the research, and she analyzes it, and then she goes to get other people, third-party sources, to analyze it.
In fact, I call her up and bitch when she's not producing for me.
I've got a deadline.
Right. Yeah.
What the hell? Yeah. So she does that, and she's really smart about. She knows how to play the media game, and this is sort of one of the things I'm obsessing about now is people who understand how to play the media game now, and people who do not, and she certainly does, and I mean, when I wrote a story for D, a cover story 3 or 4 or 5 years ago on the Trinity River Project and the people behind that, and I sort of cast it as it's really about 4 people who represented 4 different sides of this, and you were one, and Angela was one, and there were a couple other folks, and so, I almost feel good that I did at one point was able to confront her with something that she had, I'd been told in a meeting with Gail, gone blank, Gail
Thomas.
Of the Trinity Trust Foundation. Gail had just started to sort of give her side of this, and that Angela had just gotten up, said, "I'm done," and walked out of the room. And so I kind of felt good that I was able to sort of confront Angela with that.
Yeah.
And she just, but again, she's smart enough to basically say nothing that I could use. I think I still, it's like, oh, at least I angered her once.
Yeah. Right.
At least I got that skin on the wall.
Yeah.
But no, she's just, and this is what I mean about, I think it would be ridiculous, and I think you'll find people at the Morning News who feel like they still have to jump through these hoops and say, no, we're very objective. Look, she gives journalists a lot of insight into what's going on because she's about transparency and she's about small government and wants light shined in every corner.
And in the piece Eric wrote, he said that I was part of the Trinity River program story only because the people who wanted the referendum defeated in 2007 had this strategy that they felt in some parts of the city, if they could associate the referendum with me, people would vote against it. Really? And I'm afraid it worked.
Yeah, well, it did, obviously, right?
To some extent.
And that's, I think the point there, and I still think it's the point, is that the Observer plays a very important role in this city, and your column does as well, and it was sort of an outlet that until this digital revolution, people that the Morning News and other people could just ignore. In 2000 when I started working there, if you didn't pick up the paper, you didn't know about this other side to things.
And that's so interesting. We started out this show talking about old newspaper culture. I found among the old guys, the people my age in the business, who stayed in with dailies all along, but who have since left for various reasons, downsizing, retired, canned, whatever, that one of the things they talk about that they hated the most at the end was the fact that these damn readers could comment and could come back at you and criticize, and that just infuriated people, which is an index of the, I don't know, what do you call it, the arrogance or the isolation of
It's both, and it's it's also it's because we wanted to sort of it's that entire mentality of not just the newspapers but corporations of that size, and when you write about the Dallas Citizens Council, who you think you've often talked about how sort of Machiavellian they are, I guess, but I just think they're kind of lost now, and old guys who are CEOs who don't know how to play the game anymore. Those sort of organizations, first of all, the culture of the newspaper is such that it can't do what we can do, which is say, we have commenters, but 3/4 of them are idiots.
Yeah, right, and it's the same six guys.
It's the same, right. Yeah. So just ignore all those and look for the random, really intelligent ones in there.
Who are in there.
Yeah. And you just got to look for them. And then, and then somebody is publicly taking me to task for this. And that, if you can't write something that holds up against that, for one thing, write your next post that says, okay, guess what? I've got to do something different or get out of the business.
Yeah. You mentioned the Citizens Council. I maybe I'm imagining this, but I think there's this really interesting thing going on in the city council runoff elections in District 14 between Philip Kingston and Bobby Abtahi. And I've sort of sat down with both of them. They're nice enough guys, bright guys. I think Abtahi is a prisoner of the Citizens Council. I think the Citizens Council, apparently, they've started this Citizens United money tree organization.
Right.
And it looks like the Citizens Council is trying to morph into sort of a modern-day politics shop. Right. Consultant and fundraiser and so on, and campaign runner maybe, but they don't know how to do it because they're too locked in the past, and so they've told Abtahi that he cannot be against the toll road because that would be evil. I think they've told him that. I'm speculating about that.
Right, and you've written about that.
And it's killing him.
Well, is it though? I mean, a couple things. One, my again, full disclosure, I was asked to the day I came back, I had lunch with him, and if I was going to do political campaigns, to do his. And that same day, Angela said, if you're going to do campaigns, can you do Phillips? Work with Philip. So I just said, Mommy and Daddy, you're fighting. I'm just going to go in the room. I'm not going to do anything. Right. So, because I live in District 14, love and know both those folks, and think they're both really great. Right. The thing that, well, first of all, is it killing him? I was told yesterday that the polling shows it's a dead heat.
Oh, okay. That's the first I've heard of polling. So.
Yeah, that it is neck and neck. It is vote to vote.
Wow.
And so, if you want your person to win, get those extra couple of votes out, because that's at least what it's showing right now is, and it's been showing this for a few weeks, that it is really, really tight. Oh. And so that means Abtahi's come up.
Right.
And I'm sure I mispronounced the last name, but I think that's what it is. So, is it hurting him? I feel like, how to put this, and I was thinking this morning, going through an old column of yours, actually, that I think there's some weariness of the Trinity issue just from a dozen years.
Yeah.
Even people who really are upset by it and don't care about it. So I don't know that they're holding that against people, at least East Dallas. I'm talking about District 14.
Yeah.
That's a theory that that's just
sort
of out there. But is the Citizen Council trying to do that? Yeah, they've got this Educate group now that they've formed that they're trying to help, with the ISD but I firmly believe you're right, and that they don't know how to adapt to the new rules. When you look at I was talking to somebody who works with them in a communications capacity a few weeks ago, and they were stunned by the John Wiley attacks on Mike Miles. Like, they were blindsided by this. How could he come out? Why in the world? How did this become about? How did this get about race? Miles is black. How did he?
Yeah.
How did he try to say he's that? How did John Wiley basically try to paint him as not black enough?
Right.
And I was just stunned. I just said,
right.
How did you not see that coming?
Yeah.
I mean, that he was a tool of white North Dallas. You didn't see that.
Yeah.
I could have put that on an index card 6 months ago for you. So they're everything they're doing is reactive, and they're not. They think sort of responding is having a meeting, arguing about it amongst themselves, and then saying, all right, let's do a letter to the editor. Well, first of all, it's too late.
Right.
The narrative's been established, and then you've written a blog post about it, and then Front Burner's written a blog post about it, and then there's been something else about that and then there's been something else about that has, and so it's a week. Yeah. And then the Morning News has an editorial,
right.
And then they've got a second news story, and then it's established. Miles is under fire, and the business community, no one knows how they stand because you haven't said. So they're not very good at it yet, and they're. I think that's a real interesting, the neutering of them in that way that they have to learn how to play the modern, fast-paced media game if they're going to get out and sort of have influence is really interesting.
And they ain't going to learn it, I don't think. I mean, if you're going to be that kind of shop, you've got to be, if nothing else, very pragmatic. And they're not. They're always going to be religious about it, because of who they are and who runs it and who owns it and what they believe. And not to put too fine a point to it, it's going to be old rich white people.
It mostly is. I mean, I know an African American who was asked to sit on one of these boards, right, with basically to say, can you help us figure out like how this is going to go over in South Dallas. And this is where we differ a little bit in our narrative. I mean, I think you think that they're sort of this cabal of rich white guys who are kind of evil, and I think they're a cabal of rich white guys who are not altogether that bright in many cases. Now, some of them are really, Mike Boone, a guy like that, is super smart.
Right.
John Scoville's not a dumb guy, But these are CEOs about town who are used to just sort of saying, like we were talking about earlier, I want this done, get it done.
Yeah.
When they come together, and I think it was easier to do that in the 80s and the 90s, and to call up the morning news and go before the editorial board and make an argument, and the editorial would appear, and everything would cascade down from that.
Right.
And that's just not the way the world works anymore.
And I also see, and we've talked about this here on Knon just last week, there are these cultural values. By the way, I forgot to mention dear listeners, if you want to get in on this, call us up at 972-647-1893. 972-647-1893. We talked about this thing here last week and it's very interesting that you mentioned the shock and dismay over Commissioner Price's attack on Miles because they're both black. So they ought to be on the same page.
Right.
But that ain't how the world works.
Right.
And we had an interesting conversation here last week about, is Mike Miles black?
Right.
And we had a number of African American callers who called in and said, maybe not that much.
Right.
So. Right.
Which is why when I've talked about the district attorney and I've talked to some of my friends who are going to try to run against him, people who are going to be in campaigns against him this time, and I just say, look, that is a guy that no matter what else you do, he is somebody who the black community in South Dallas says he is one of us.
Right.
And when we got our polling back the first time, there was John Wally Price, and there was everybody, and then Royce West, and everybody beneath that in terms of, do you feel like this person represents South Dallas, your core values? And by the way, there was one person ahead of John Wiley, and that was Craig Watkins. By far, and these were consultants around the country said they'd never seen someone poll. It was 98% favorability or something. Like they just didn't. It was statistically impossible.
Right.
So that sort of brand identity, if I can go all no matter what else you say, and I try to get people to understand this, it better be really amazing. It better be really eat away at whatever sort of thing they admire that person for. And for example, with Craig, that is someone who is our man downtown,
right,
who's trying to keep the streets safe and making sure that the police don't beat us over the head with billy clubs.
I never know what to say when I have white people say to me, well, why would the black community continue to support this John Wiley Price, given all these problems? And the answer is, they know about all those problems, but they like him way better than they like you.
Right.
So, here we got Tony on line 2. Tony, how are you this
Hello, how y'all doing?
How are you? What's up?
All right. Well, I want to piggyback what you talked about the Citizen Council,
right,
and how I think the black community reacts to it. My thing is, if they were truthful in their vision and they came to the black community, we can handle it different. But all we see is how North Dallas wants things done by consulting us, and then this backlash happens. And the reality is, if you're going to be a whole community, this north-south divide, let me have a seat at the table and be honest.
Right.
At the end of the day, we know North Dallas runs Dallas, or Highland Park, University Park runs Dallas.
Right.
What happened was you got these lawyers come out of nowhere that want to be part of the Dallas political machine, and then they lie and tell you these stories rather than say, I'm a Republican, I believe in these values, because city politics is non-political in some degree.
Right.
And like I said, what Mike Miles is, what I get out of Mike Miles is this: he is a product of the reforms of education that come out of these foundations. If he come out of his children.
Oh, Tony, we lost you, boo.
Well, I was just going to say, right. I mean, what you got in these Citizens Council group, if you just go down the list, it's online, and you'll see CEO after CEO after CEO. These are people who are used to sort of a top-down management style, and say, look, I've figured out what's best. Here's what we need to go do, and maybe I've drank too much Kool-Aid, but I believe a lot of them, really do believe that they're trying to help DISD, et cetera, and so on, and are really trying to do that. But they can't figure out how to get what they think is the right answer, and get you to tell them what they think they already know.
Right.
And so it's there's that divide's always going to be there.
We'll be back after the break. Jim Schutze, Eric Celeste, get off my lawn.
If it's time to get rid of your old gas guzzler, the Knon Vehicle Donation Program can help. There's still a market for those old vehicles, and if you donate it, you're helping to support quality programming here on KNON. Just call 877-KNON-AUTO or go online to knon.org. We'll take care of everything from pickup to tax paperwork. That's 877-KNON-AUTO or online at knon.org.
Hi there, this is Celeste, inviting you to my R&B guitar party on Father's Day, Sunday, June the 16th at Port Davis Pub, starring George Stansdale, Cookie McGee, Jimmy Preacher Ellis, Sam Whitaker, and Chester Burns, featuring Jewel, for a Sunday evening of fine rhythm and blues guitar.
Included is a free chicken dinner courtesy of Henderson Chicken while it lasts, so get there early to eat. Doors open at 4 p.m. Tickets are available now at knon.org. Bill's Records and Forever Young Records in Grand Prairie. Port David's Pub is located at 1313 South Lamar in Dallas on the south side.
Make this a Father's Day to remember with George Stansdale, Cookie McGee, Jimmy Preacher Ellis, Sam Whitaker, and Chester Burns, featuring Jewel and me, Celeste, at my R&B guitar party on Sunday, June the 16th at Port Davis Pub. This is a KNON benefit event.
Tickets are also available at the new location of Henderson Chicken at Walnut Hill Lane and 35 and at the Henderson Chicken on Grand Avenue.
Hey, babes, I'll take one.
Jim Schutze back with Get Off My Lawn. Our last 20 minutes here with Eric Celeste, and we talked just a tad about city council stuff, but we've been talking about school reform, something Eric has both covered and been involved in here and in Atlanta, and there are parallels with other cities. We're not the Lone Ranger here. We were talking off air about the fact that it's interesting. You hear a lot. Tony, our caller, talked about how Mike Miles, he feels, is brought to us, our new school superintendent and champion of school reform. He feels is sort of the errand boy for the foundations and the rich white guys and business guys and so on. I don't think that's true. I think that Miles is more independent than that. But certainly it is true that there is this big corporate presence pushing reform. And what's tough for an old white hippie liberal like me to get in his head is that even though these are a bunch of rich business types, they are not as monolithically white as those kinds of people used to be. It's more the world has changed, and this is a more diverse group of people, and they have more experience of diversity. But the main thing is they have in their hearts this notion that the poorest minority kid from the toughest background in this city can and should be taught to be as smart as the rich white kid by the end of the third grade. I think that's a revolutionary notion.
Yeah, and they do understand. I mean, I really believe this, and I think a lot of them believe it, passionately. They do understand that it's important to fix whatever's wrong with DISD and make it a better school system for everybody, because if just for practical reasons. Well, you've got to get the corporations to come here, to get a tax base, to have people, everybody, when they reach a certain age and their kid reaches a certain age, we have this conversation hundreds of times, right? What am I going to do? Where am I going to put my kid? Do I need to go out of DISD? I don't want to, but I have to. They've got to fix that, and they know that.
Now we have a caller I'm really worried about. I don't know how this is going to go. This is like one of the Texas's best blues stations, for example.
Oh, no.
And we don't get callers named Tim very often.
I know, yeah.
So we got a guy,
Marty,
on line one named Tim. Tim.
Hi, Jim. This a first-time listener and first-time caller.
Yes.
And scintillating conversation. I've really enjoyed it. But I have a question for Eric. If you're LeBron James in Game 1 in the fourth quarter, the game is on the line and you're down by 2.
Right.
When you're driving, you dish to Chris Bosch for that three-pointer, or do you take it to the rim yourself? I'll hang up and listen.
Very quickly, because this isn't this kind of show. Yeah, he made the right play. You've got to trust, even in the fourth quarter, statistically, making that play is the right play, and it's the right play whether there's 5 seconds left on the clock or it's 5 seconds into the game. If he makes that, then he's brilliant. He did what Michael Jordan did and passed the ball to Steve Kerr to hit the game-winning shot. You've got to live with the vagaries of the game.
Eric, what language are you speaking? What's going on?
Sorry.
What are we talking about?
Sorry. That would be Tim Rogers, the editor of D Magazine, just trying to blow up the show.
That's what okay. Yeah, I wondered. Like I say, we don't get a lot of Tims here. Well, look, speaking of D, I've always wondered this. Because I think that Wick Allison and Tim have been brilliantly innovative people in the past. Why don't they just start a magazine called D Rich Idiots? I mean, wouldn't that get to the target demo?
I don't think he would start a magazine.
Oh.
I have a website, maybe.
Yeah.
A mobile site.
For rich idiots. I mean...
An app.
Yeah.
An app.
Right.
That's what you need.
Yeah.
And, like it would write. It would tell you things like, don't spend your windfall all at once. And, here's the real number to Mary Soom.
An interactive thing, is my shirt okay? You can hold it up and show your shirt. And
is this girl too young to be on my arm?
Right.
That sort of thing.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just a thought. Look, Eric, I said at the beginning of the show we were going to have this emotional moment. I hate to spring this on you like this, but why don't we do this show together, Eric?
Sure.
I mean, it could be like the Andy and Opie show.
I love it. Let's do it.
Okay. I just it's been going so well, and we have a good vibe here. I just think we ought to keep it up.
I'm all for it, although I'm waiting for whatever's coming behind me. What the joke is here?
You did have him sign that piece of paper right at the beginning of the thing. Okay, yeah, that's a 1-year commitment.
Oh.
So that's great. That's great.
It's my 6th job today that I've taken. That's great.
And as I say, you only get half of what I get.
Right.
But take it to Kroger's and see what they'll give you for it.
I think a beer.
Yeah. Well, that'll be great. And Tim, I'm sorry. Your name is not Tim. It's, Eric. Eric. You do start next month as City Columnist, D Magazine, writing about Angela Hunt, a fascinating character. Do you think, now don't give anything away,
okay?
Do you think she's done with politics?
That's a great question.
Do you want her to be done with politics? Because I do. I'll tell you why in a minute.
That's easier for me to answer because I don't have to start thinking about conversations and going, was that personal or was that on the record? No, I don't want her to be. I think she has I think the column makes this point. I mean, I think she has an image problem beyond District 14. Mm-hmm. And, that is that, and I get to this, I mean, I think District 14 knows the work that she's done and knows the details and the hard work that she's done. And, the rest of the city sees her as sort of, against the high profile items. And people are funny. Voters are funny, right? They say that they want someone downtown watching every penny.
Right.
And they want somebody who's filling potholes and not giving into the corporate interests. But they seem to vote for people who love bridges.
Yeah.
And big vision. Right.
Vision.
They have a vision. Yeah. And are not dividers, but are people who bring people together.
Yeah.
Your Jennifer Staubach Gates sort of pitch.
Yeah.
And those are people who seem to win handily in elections.
Right.
So I think she's got a problem just in terms of that. But she's, she could be a judge. She could be, she could be, I floated an idea that I had one night after too many brown drinks. That why doesn't she in the next when Miles becomes our ninth, or our, when we're about to hire our ninth in 20 years, why doesn't she think about a DISD? And be somebody who can understand the politics. Instead of getting an educator who you ask to understand the politics, get a politician who you can then bring in someone to help you understand the education. As superintendent.
Yeah.
And
it's a great idea.
I thought it was brilliant. And I floated it by someone I respect at DISD, and they said, that's a terrible idea. But
here's why I don't. I hope she's done with politics. It's because I like her and I have this huge admiration for her, and I think people make this enormous sacrifice, and all of them, except for Von Hill, all of them will make this enormous sacrifice when they go on the council, and they get not only very little back for it, most of them.
Right.
Some of them manage to turn it into this or that, but most of them come out with this huge deficit. And I just look at Angela Hunt and I think, I want her to just go make a ton of money.
Well, I think she's going to do that for a while, which you should. She's got young kids, right?
Yeah.
Like she went to law school so that, I don't begrudge any lawyer to go out and charge their $400 an hour and bank some money, make some bank. So I think she's going to for a while, and actually be able to have a little bit of a lifestyle and raise her children. But this is totally my gut. I don't think she's done. I think she's too passionate about it, and she has that, which is sort of a disease, I think.
Yeah, that's what I worry about. That's what I worry about, because a lot of them catch that. And especially in city politics, it can be a very destructive disease, just because it's so hard. I don't know if Dallas City Hall is a springboard to anywhere.
Anything. Well, it's just so different than any of the other statewide offices or, et cetera. You can actually get things done that people can see, and I write about that a little in my column. Things that you can put your thumbprint on and go, if I had not been on the council, that would not have been done.
Right.
This big project would have been done whether I was here or not.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't have been done, and that made this street better, and that by making this street better, my neighborhood is a little better, that neighborhood is a little better, and I've helped a few people. And I think that's what that's the juice you get, right?
Yeah.
That's what makes you feel good. And you try to transfer that. I mean, do you know anybody in state politics who can do that? I just don't.
And if you try to explain Dallas to people in politics elsewhere, I used to try to explain it to people in Houston when I worked for the Houston Chronicle. And they just absolutely, their eyes go to half-mast because they don't get what you're talking about. They're used to these coalitions of progressives and labor people and minorities. And you try to explain, well, now in Dallas, the black leadership is pretty much allied with the old rich white guys against the progressive neighborhood movement. And people just think you're nuts.
Can we talk a little bit about the strong mayor idea that I floated on the blog this week? Just because, it's been floated many times, but that made me think about being in Atlanta for a year. I got to see a city that's people think is very similar to Dallas, and it is in a lot of ways. But they have a strong mayor, Kasim Reed. And going there, I would go to meetings, and everyone would be complaining because the mayor's getting rid of this person at the housing authority and putting his crony there, and the mayor's getting rid of this person at the airport and putting his crony there, and the city council is completely irrelevant, and the mayor's doing this, and they would just go, "Isn't this terrible?" And I would sit back and I would lean back and just go, "That's amazing! This is awesome!
Doing stuff.
He's doing things, and you have one person to blame or to praise
and fire him.
Fire him if you don't like him. It was, and by the way, also because of that, had a lot of sway in school board matters. It was so different from what goes on here, and because of that, he had a lot of power, and he therefore was shielded from some of the old moneyed groups that like to run things, and he could be a little more independent.
Yes. I once heard Herb Kelleher give this amazing off-the-cuff speech about how great the mayor of Detroit was, Coleman Young, because he'd just been up there. They were doing some deal about the close-in airport up there. And he went on and on. He said, man, you go up there to Detroit, and you go in and you do a deal with the mayor, and you got a deal.
Done.
Yeah. And he was comparing that to Dallas, where the deal is never done for anybody.
Right.
You think you have a deal, and then you get a call from some code inspector the next week who says, well,
it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would just like to see it. Now, maybe it's a bad idea, and maybe, but I'd love to see what we could do with that.
I get pushback from people. I've gotten it from Hunt and from other people who say, why do you want to, well, we're just getting to this point where we're developing a new center on the council, a new kind of center of gravity where we're going to have a caucus of dissenters and independent thinkers at one end of the council horseshoe, and why would you want to pull the rug out from under us and give it all to the mayor? And I understand those issues.
Sure.
And council independence is great, but man, there is a point at which the buck just has to stop somewhere. Also,
because you have, being objective about it, some of those things that your Scott Griggs and Sandy Grayson and Angela and the folks who are that progressive wing of the council, part of it is their hard work. Part of it is the forces of time and nature and the next generation,
right,
and what they want. And it's they're sort of, this rising tide is lifting everybody. And the move toward urbanism, the move toward people getting rid of cars, wanting walkability, an urban center that is developing organically, they're helpful and they're important. But you could also have a strong mayor who is out fighting for his golf course or whatever, and those things are still going to happen eventually because the market forces demand it. It's happening in every city around the country that has any sort of vibrancy whatsoever. So I get it, but it's not like I think that would it might be harder, and it might have to happen in other ways. But that's happening because private developers are going to where the money is. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm not going to be here. We're not going to be here next week. Have to be absent, and so David Taffet has very generously agreed to do a special hour on what an idiot Jim Schutze is, and I think that'll be popular and attract a lot of attention. But
can I come do that show too?
Yeah. If you have something, I see people nodding. But 2 weeks from now, Eric, are you coming back?
Yeah, sure. I got my Saturday mornings free.
What if we could get Hunt on here?
I think we can make that happen.
Wow, that'd be cool. And we can grill her about the good riddance issue.
Right.
Do you feel that you are good riddance?
Right. I think we can finally get some things done now.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Depending on who's coming in. Ooh, that's scary. Coming in behind her. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Having Eric Celeste here, and he's committed to come back and
2 weeks.
Yeah, liven things up, and maybe we can talk just this theme you've just touched on at the end, but it's a really fascinating one for me. Is the sort of new generation coming along in the city, the whole Back to the City movement, and the effect of funerals. If we have a lot of funerals, that brings about a certain turnover and interesting shift for the city. Now we don't want to do anything to hasten that process, right?
But I don't think we have to.
No, we just got to wait for them.
Right.
But the passing of one generation and the arrival of a new one here in the city, and what that's going to mean for Dallas. I never thought I would hear myself say this, but there are some ways in which Dallas is becoming cool.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is, and it's great to I live downtown, and it's great to bring people in and have neighborhoods you can show off and be proud of.
And for a lot of 20-somethings, it's like Brooklyn, but your parents don't have to support you. You can get a job.
Well, it'd be great if they did.
Yeah, right. I've always thought so. Hey, listen, this is Jim Schutze, Eric Celeste. Get off my lawn. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.